Anchor, I think, has been like talking to God a lot. And I don't know how it started, but I did overhear Anchor saying, well, you just need to, listen for him to speak. Just think a lot, and then eventually you'll start to recognize his voice is speaking to you. And I was like, wow, that is so deep. And Everest
cool.
Didn't take that to heart and instead was like, well, you hear God, but do you snap loud? And I was like, is this what he's like equating? Like it suddenly becomes a competition.
The boys are always asking me, ask God about random bits of information or something like that. And, one time semi-recently, they're like, how do chameleons change colors? And I'm like,
I actually don't know.
I don't know. And they're like, well, ask God. And I was like, okay, sure, why not? God, how do chameleons change color? And then I saw this weird picture in my mind of like these kind of crystal looking things going like this, expanding and scattering and then coming together.
Huh.
And like they would go in between like light and dark as they're expanding and coming together. But I had no idea how to explain that. But so I kind of told them something that was like loosely connected to that. And then I was like, I Googled it because I was curious. So I looked it up and it turns out they actually have these things. I think they call them nanocrystals.
Oh my gosh.
Inside their skin that actually expand, like scatter or condense, and that changes the shade. Isn't that crazy?
That's
so like
wild.
like the Lord actually, he's like, yeah, I'll tell you how chameleons change color.
I love
Isn't that crazy?
so
But I
much.
didn't know enough about what's happening to even interpret what he's showing me. I'm like, that's
so then you had to Google it and
abstract
figure it
image,
I love that though, because that
pretty cool.
teaches the kids like, oh, you can just ask questions.
Good stuff. So today, this is actually something that we teach our kids about as well, is loving enemies.
Yeah.
If there's a kid who's mean at school or something like that.
Yeah.
We teach them, well, be nice to them, unreasonably so. Actually, there's not very many mean kids at their school, but if there's ever an opportunity like that, we get to teach that. That was my segue into what we're talking about today, which is loving enemies. Love those enemies.
Gotta love them.
Love you, enemies. Give us some nasty comments.
Oh my God.
We'll compliment you in return.
Joel. Stop.
Here's to you, enemies. So, I would share this coffee with you, enemies, who are watching this.
Oh my God.
Because I love you. We are, we love this message.
Yeah, I think this is
a
core us message.
This is something God has really dropped on our hearts.
Yeah, I think I remember the first time that I experienced this message without really knowing it. I don't think I even would have thought of the verse.
What are you talking about?
Like back in the day when I remember this. I remember this is core to my experience of missions. It's actually really profound.
Okay.
Do you remember?
I don't know what you're talking about.
You have no idea what I'm talking about.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I think you'll know as soon as I start talking about it.
Well, let's find out.
Well, let's find out right now. Are you ready? Are you ready? Oh, God. It was when we went to Urbana.
Mm-hmm.
We went to Urbana.
I know what you're talking about now.
This is a little backstory. So anyways, enjoy. We went to Urbana, which is like a massive missions conference, right? Like every missions organization ever goes there. Somehow, I think because of you, I got invited because we were dating.
Me, baby.
Ow. Because we were dating, I got invited because you were obviously a good choice for this. And I have no idea what they were thinking in inviting me to join, because it was a small group of us and everybody who went was like supposedly really missions minded.
You love missions.
I do, but
anyways, you were there. That's the point.
I was there. That's the point. And I felt very like out of place because internally I was like, none of this is so strange.
What happened while you were there?
Stop moving me along. I will take this whole podcast to tell this story.
Where did we? We
Okay.
ate at the old spaghetti factory. That was delightful.
I ate there.
I also ate there.
Did you?
Yes.
Anyways.
So what happened while you were there?
So, anyways, I remember it was multiple days and I felt kind of out of place. I just because I didn't have a strong burning desire to be like in missions. That as a teenager, that was not something that was I felt very like it was not in my calling, and was actually a reason that we broke up at one point, was because
you were 16, 17, something like that.
I was like determined. I was like, I knew I wasn't. Our callings weren't compatible.
Your brain was only like 30% developed at that point.
I think, do women's brains develop faster? I feel like they do.
Savage. I don't even know enough science to answer that.
Oh, perfect. But anyway, this is not the point. The point is that I had some profound experiences there that marked me forever. One of which was it was
Go on.
Stop. I'm literally getting to it. I hope this is why you came. This is why I listen to podcasts, is for this sort of ridiculousness. We were at breakfast and they were airing like on like global television. I don't know if it was actually it was like the time leading up to the execution of Saddam Hussein. And I just I remember sitting at breakfast waiting for our shuttle to the event, and I just felt like deep grief over it. And I just felt like a loss of, I don't know, there's like a deep grief. Like there's like this
over Saddam Hussein being
hanged.
Yeah.
And I think I was just too young to really put words to that feeling. But at the time, I think I remember thinking like, oh, I just thought of Apostle Paul and like the kind of person that he was. Like there was no reason that the church should be excited about
absolutely
his conversion, right? Like that would have been like, everybody was afraid. Nobody wanted to, God had to tell somebody, go and get him, right?
Yeah.
But I'm thinking about like I think at the time I thought of, wow, the opportunity for a Paul.
It's like the loss of a person, like without redemption.
And I think I felt,
and it's also the loss of potential.
Yeah, and I think, but I think I also thought of it as like, I felt it deeply in a kind of like losing a brother. And it's not that he was
you and Saddam were tight back then, right? Like you guys, you'd go over and open the fridge and get a soda, sit down on the couch. Saddam, what do you want? You just take the remote, whatever he's watching, you just change it to your own show, and he never minded.
This is not
right.
I don't even know how to respond to this.
Deep thoughts. Anyways.
Okay, you know what I'm talking about, though. And
Uncle Saddam.
I know.
Can Hussein come out and play? You're always...
No, stop.
What's his name? What's his name come out and play?
What? Get out of here. Get out of here. Saddam.
I can't remember all these other guys' names.
Okay. Anyways, the point was, this was serious. I felt a lot of grief about the loss of like I think I saw the potential for that, like for who he was. And I think it was honestly the like birth of like this message in my heart.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you.
So
I'm with you.
You are the most annoying.
I'm still dreaming up scenarios where you're hanging out with Saddam Hussein.
Get out.
I'm like,
I can't. The one serious thing I say.
Yeah. Anyways, you guys ever heard of General Butt Naked? You can look him up online.
It's not going to bring up anything weird. Don't worry.
It might. but it'll also bring up the real story. Just go to the Wikipedia page because that's about the actual guy. If there's any other like suspect websites
Maybe don't click.
with the title that says General Butt Naked, don't go to those. I don't know what those are, but the Wikipedia page, honestly, like it super impacted me just reading about his life. But I've heard about him from a number of different sources. But he was this warlord in Africa, and he would do all this crazy, just horrible stuff, abducting
really
children,
awful.
human sacrifices. I believe he was involved in cannibalism. And he's like, all this, killed a lot of people, warlord, right? And then the Christians prayed for him, reached out to him.
Yeah.
He repented. He encountered Jesus, repented, was delivered, got born again, and then became an evangelist. And he made it his personal mission to find the families of every child that he abused or killed. And he gets on his knees and begs for their forgiveness. So he's like spent years doing that, but also preaching the gospel and just, wow, crazy transformation. I love that story. It's like, that's another Apostle Paul type of scenario. The thing we maybe don't appreciate about Paul, like you put it in modern times, and when he was known as Saul, like he was a religious extremist.
Yes.
He was a religious radical.
Yes.
Who's in a holy war, right?
Yeah.
He thinks he's doing a service to God.
Yeah.
By abusing, imprisoning, and having Christians killed.
Yeah.
And then he encounters God.
Yeah.
And he's how many people are in the world today that could be that?
Yeah, so many, I think.
I remember being in a prayer meeting where people were praying for Joseph Kony, another African warlord, to be killed.
Yeah.
And I was standing in the back of that room. I was heartbroken. I was like, God, ignore them. Ignore them. Save him instead. Like, send people to him. Deliver him. Silence the demonic voices in his life. Like, let your kingdom come and your will be done in his life. Turn him around. Make it a testimony of your grace, That was my heart's cry.
Yeah. I think like we have like that brings me to something because for me, when people are praying that way, I'm like, you have lost a lot of the plot of what we're in, right? Yeah. Like this is not
kill him, Lord.
Yeah, like I get okay, I'm not condoning obviously atrocities committed against innocent people.
No, of course not.
Like that's just absolutely crazy. I'm also not ignoring that.
No.
I don't believe in not like doing something, to like rescue, the innocent and the oppressed. You gotta
protect them and this kind of thing.
But I will say that as a church, like we've been told, like we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against spirits, principalities.
Correct.
Right? And so when I'm looking at somebody who's committing so much evil, I see the real enemy.
Yeah.
Like, and I see that this person is a victim to the real enemy.
I think in the kingdom culture, kingdom lifestyle, rather than fighting against your enemy, you actually end up fighting for your enemy.
Yes.
Yes. And I love in Matthew 18 Jesus is talking about when somebody sins against you or offends you, here's what you do. You approach them, you go through this process, and then he says, if he listens to you, you've won your brother. Like he's not saying you've won the fight, you've won the argument, you've won your brother.
Yeah.
And that's the goal, right?
Yeah.
To win a person as a brother.
I think it's like rescuing from the like oppression of the enemy, of Satan. Like they're literally enslaved.
Jesus said, if you love your enemies, you're going to get a reward. Mm. And some of us think about rewards as, I know I grew up thinking this, heavenly reward, heavenly treasures in heaven, right? Like crowns, jewels, and gold, and like bigger house. Get the bigger house. I want a huge house. Make all the other saints jealous, right? No,
Oh my
maybe not
God,
make them
that is
jealous,
not
but
what
you
you
gotta get the
thought.
big house. That's not what I thought, but that is kind of how it's
No, it's just
presented sometimes.
treasures,
Is like
rewards.
it's treasure, it's a big mansion. No, this is a legitimate.
No, I
this is
know,
an
I
actual
know,
thought
I know,
people
I
have.
know.
You get a bigger house, this kind of thing.
Yeah, but I'm just saying you didn't think that. You were not like, I
But
need the biggest house.
whether I did or not is beside the point. But I think the treasure, heavenly treasures. What are the rewards? What are the heavenly treasures?
Yeah.
And we think about what was Jesus' reward, right? He endured the cross for the joy set before him.
Yeah.
He has an inheritance
Yeah.
in the saints.
Yes.
He has an inheritance in the saints.
Yeah.
In us.
Yes.
Isaiah 53, if he would render himself as a guilt offering,
Yeah.
he would see his offspring.
Yeah.
That was the prize. That was the reward.
Massive.
Was us.
Yeah.
It was winning us
Yeah.
as friends,
Yeah.
as children,
Yeah.
as brothers, right? Winning us back into connection with him.
Yeah.
And I think that is probably more like that's probably more in line with the kinds of rewards and treasures that he's promising is love your enemy, and your reward is you get your enemy as a brother.
Yeah. Well, it's his reward. Also,
Exactly.
like they are included in this. It's not like, okay, they've done too much and therefore they're no longer his reward. It's not true. Like, it's not even a little bit true. Like, they are the one that he leaves the 99 for.
Well, Romans 7 is we've been sold to in slavery to sin. That word there, it has this connotation of you've been trafficked by sin.
Yes.
And what we need to understand is this is the human condition.
Yeah.
And this is the condition of enemies, of crazy warlords, or guys like Saddam Hussein, trafficked under sin. Oh, I remember this experience a couple of years ago. I was preaching at a church a couple hours north of here, and we were walking out, and there's this little shanty town next door, and we heard all this banging and yelling. So we ran over there. There's this man beating his wife. You remember this?
Yeah, I do.
And as I got closer, I saw he was actually brandishing an axe.
Mm-hmm.
And so we ran over there, had somebody else call the authorities, stepped in and separated them. And some people went over and talked with the woman to find out what's going on, make sure that she's safe, that kind of thing. And I walked over to the man. I went into his little shack house there and sat down with him. And then my friend Tim walked up, and when he walked up, he had a word of knowledge. He saw a vision of that guy. This guy was older. He had all gray hair. Mm. And Tim had a vision of that man as a young child being beaten by his dad. Mm. And he said to this guy, "You were beaten when you were a child, weren't you?" And the guy just broke down crying. Mm. And in that moment, there's this like protector thing that's like, I want to protect this woman from being beaten. Like, this stops here. I'm stepping in. Yeah. But in that moment with that guy, I felt like the Lord was saying, who's going to advocate for that little boy? Mm. And then I suddenly saw this man as an abused child who just lived a long time. Mm. Yeah. And God's like, who's his advocate? Yeah. And that's not to say God is not overlooking. No. He is a righteous judge who stands with the oppressed.
Yes, absolutely.
He is the one who sent fire and brimstone on Sodom and Gomorrah for not grasping the hand of the needy and for abusing foreigners and strangers.
Yes.
He is a righteous judge.
Yes.
He stands with the oppressed and the fatherless.
Yes.
And you do not want to be on his bad side. He opposes the proud and exalts the humble.
Yes, totally.
But also, he has this heavenly perspective where he sees what's really going on. He sees that the true oppressor is sin. He sees that the true oppressor is Satan. Yeah. And he is fighting for the sinful people. That's why Jesus went to the cross. Yeah. That is the ultimate statement about God's feeling towards enemies.
Yeah. Yes.
is the cross.
Yes. And we were all enemies.
Because in that moment, he was dying for the people who were killing him.
Yeah.
He was praying for the people who were killing him. He's saying, Father, forgive them.
Yeah.
They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Jesus only died for bad people.
Yeah. Yes.
Only.
Yes.
He did not die for good people. If you are a sinful person, if you're broken, if there's that evil potential in you to do the worst that we've seen in the human race, then you're the one that he died for.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I don't think we appreciate the toxicity of sin.
No, I don't think so.
For me, I don't sure there's sins or transgressions where you do something wrong.
Yeah.
But I see sin as it's this invisible force, this entity that's behind all of the evil and brokenness in the world.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing that would get you to lie or take advantage of someone in the wrong way, but you leave that, even in a minor way, but you leave that alone and let it grow and develop and fester, and before you're committing the Holocaust. It's the same thing that just grows to maturity. And you know, the Bible says the wages of sin is death, the gift of God is eternal life. Like, sin pays a wage of death.
Yeah.
Sin is a killer, and that is behind that's what's driving the worst people in the world.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So let's look at the Sermon on the Mount here, right?
Oh, the Sermon on the Mount. I love the Sermon on the Mount, and it is so offensive and wonderful.
I'd love to look at this. So in Luke 6, this is amazing here. So maybe this is the Sermon on the Plain, but the Beatitudes.
Right.
Right. Leading up to the Beatitudes in the Sermon on the Plain, there's all these people from all over the world, all over the region there, I should say. The known world is Judea, Jerusalem, Tyre, Sidon, all these places. They'd come to hear him and be healed of their diseases, and those who were troubled by unclean spirits were being cured. And all the people were trying to touch him because power was coming from him and healing them all. So this is a crazy, I love, just put yourself in that moment, right? It's like Jesus, this huge crowd of people, and they're demonized and they're sick and all these things, and they're just pushing in and trying to get as close as possible to him.
I think we've experienced this, actually.
Because those who get close enough are being healed. There's power radiating from him.
Yeah, that's wild.
And anyone who gets close enough is being healed of whatever they have or delivered of whatever they have. So they're just desperate. They're
just trying to touch him.
And we have been in like mini versions of this where
little
there's
versions,
people pressing in and
grabbing you.
It gets desperate. There's this desperation of like, I've got to get, and they're being healed as well.
Yeah.
But this was much bigger.
Massive.
As well.
Amount
and then
of people.
in that moment, it has to have been chaotic. I'm picturing it because I'm thinking of some of the moments that we've been in. And I'm like, this was a bigger version of that. I'm like, this must have been chaotic. And he has them sit down. And he looks at them in that moment. And he said, "Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God." Wow. In this moment, the kingdom of God is just crashing in on the sick, the demonized, the poor. They're grabbing him and they're receiving it. They're experiencing it. He said, "Blessed are you, happy, rejoice if you're poor, because the kingdom of God is for you." And he goes into the Beatitudes, and then he teaches them about this kingdom and how to live in it. What an evangelism model, right? What if we just healed the sick, cast out demons, and taught people how to live in the kingdom of God. Like, wow.
Amazing.
That's what I've been trying to, that's,
I feel like
that's the
what we do.
direction I've been taking now for the last however
pretty
many
sure that's
years.
what we do.
But in Luke 6:27 through 35, he goes into this long thing pertaining to enemies. And he says, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who are abusive to you. Whoever hits you on the cheek, offer him the other also. Whoever takes away your cloak, don't withhold your tunic from him either. Give to everyone who asks of you. Whoever takes away what is yours, do not demand it back. Treat people the same way you want them to treat you. And if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. If you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. And if you lend to those from whom you expect to receive, what credit is that to you? That's why Proverbs says, give to the poor. Yeah. And you're lending to the Lord. Yeah. Yeah. You give not expecting back, and God's going to repay you. If you expect to receive it back, that's it. Yeah. There's your reward. But even sinners lend to sinners in order to receive back the same amount. But love your enemies and do good, and lend, expecting nothing in return. Give to your enemies. Wow. Give to them. Mm-hmm. Hello. And your reward will be great, and you'll be sons of the Most High, for he himself is kind to ungrateful and evil people.
Be merciful.
Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. So this is utter nonsense. All right? Talking from the world's perspective. If you put this in the way of the world, this is oil and water.
No, and Ooh.
I mean, it's heaven's wisdom. It's not nonsense, but from the world's perspective, that's what I'm saying.
It's honestly just really offensive. Like,
so offensive.
It really goes against such human, like just everything that feels right.
We need to get Marcus Young on this podcast.
Yes, we do. And
have him tell some stories, because they're so upsetting.
Yes, they are. I like, where do you even start with this?
Well, here's a question. Does it actually work? What happens?
Oh, can we wait before we even launch into this? Can we say what this is not condoning, right? Yeah. Like, this is not saying if you're being abused, stay with your abuser, right?
If you're in an abusive relationship, then just
volunteer for it. Yeah.
I don't think that's what it's talking about.
No, absolutely not.
Because again, you take this in the context of the scriptures.
Yeah.
And God is this warrior.
Yes.
He is a powerful father who acts as a judge.
Yeah.
And punishes the oppressors. That is who he is.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We're not going to say that's not who he is. So you hold this in context. So if you're in an abusive relationship, get out, use boundaries, that kind of thing. I think that would be a misuse of this text.
Of course. And I just wanted to say that I think that's really important to say, that is not what this is saying. And the other thing for me that I see in this, when I see the overview of this, I see how clearly it's painting who the actual enemy is. Because when you actually see like the spiritual forces behind this, like, you recognize that to actually like destroy the force of darkness or the enemy, like to like do something to the actual enemy, the best way to do that is to actually take their pawn.
So there's all this like extremism happening right now in the world, and there's the war on terror, and what's going on in the Middle East is also a reaction to extremism and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I remember
kind of extremism also.
Totally.
Yeah, it's awful.
So I remember last year I had the chance to have a couple of conversations with the chief of the anti-extremism task force of a country. Yes. And he's been fighting terrorists for a couple decades. Yeah. This guy, he's been in it for a long
military
time.
Force fighting terrorists.
Yeah. They're sending airstrikes on ISIS bases. and this kind of thing.
Yeah.
This is not American. This is in another country. And so he was telling us how, you know, in that place, he's been a part of the Love Your Enemy movement.
Yeah.
That we are connected into as well. And he was sharing with me how maybe in the early 2000s, they were sending airstrikes on these hotbeds of extremism.
Yeah.
And he was looking at the children and the youth. And he was saying, if we don't change our tactics, if we keep just bombing these people, we're going to have another siege in 15 years.
Yep.
And so they kept sending airstrikes and bombing them and that kind of thing, because those kids are going to grow up and they're going to fight.
Absolutely.
And what happened is exactly that. 15 years later, they had a siege. Those kids had grown up and now they were the militants. And several thousand civilians died in that city because of that siege. And he's like, we've got to have a change in taxes. The reality is, if you're fighting against extremism,
with extremism,
you're
perpetuating cycles.
Yeah.
How do you think you're breaking this cycle? You are not.
It's like a grease fire. You're throwing water on a grease fire.
Yeah.
And it just blows it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just adding the same thing into like what's already happening.
I believe it was Martin Luther King Jr. who said, you cannot extinguish hate with hate.
Yeah.
Only love can do that.
Yeah.
And this is what the colonel was saying, was that the only approach, if you actually want to break the cycle of violence, is love, is radical love. And it's crazy to hear a military guy saying this, because
that was wild. That was crazy.
I love the love your enemy message and that kind of thing. I want to see, Paul, the story of Paul replicated around the world. Yeah. But where it's always broken down for me is on a governmental level.
Like, how does this work, actually?
And I'm like, well, this is good for like an individual believer or a church or something like that. But like, this doesn't really work on a governmental level, because, this Romans 13.
Well, we're talking
the government doesn't bear the sword in vain. He's God's minister.
And we're talking like the responsibility for thousands of innocent people who are not, involved in.
So what this guy did is, and others there, they've been championing this concept of loving enemies, but from a governmental angle. And this blew my mind to hear this guy talk about this. It absolutely blew my mind, because they, as members of the armed forces, as the government, began to advocate for the villages of the extremists, for the families of the extremists. There are some laws passed by the central government that would have some bad implications for the families of the militants.
Yep.
And so they were writing letters to the central government saying, hey, you're not thinking about this militant group when you're writing these laws, and they're advocating for the militants.
They're just they're literally doing good.
And
to those who hate them, because they've been, it's literally their enemies.
His men came to him one time and they captured a militant, and they're like, do you want us to execute him? And he said, no, let him go and let him see a beautiful life. That was his words. Let him go and let him see a beautiful life. And 5 years later, they went and found the guy on his birthday. And this colonel brought him a birthday cake, and they had a little birthday party for him. The military, for this militant that they'd released, they had a little birthday party for him. And he told his guys, he said, take pictures of this and send it to the militants, because I want them to see how we're treating their men.
Yes.
And it's like, it used to be you'd put a head on a stake outside the city. This is the example, pirates beware, whatever, like hanging a skeleton or something. Yeah. But this is like, we're going to make him a cake. I want you to see this is how we're treating your people. And like I said, this is nonsense, right?
No, it actually and truly seems like utter foolishness. And like when you're looking, even as like somebody who's like familiar, I'm familiar with like the testimonies that are coming from this, because we have people who are literally living in war zones doing this sort of thing with enemies, and like seeing we'll tell more stories, but literally seeing just like unbelievably crazy results from this. But even then, for me, when I'm looking at this message, I'm still see it and I'm like, this is total foolishness to the human mind. Like, it makes no sense. But
no, go ahead.
It's because it's heavenly wisdom. It's God's wisdom, which
God's
does
wisdom.
not, we can't comprehend that kind of power. And it's power. It's actual power.
So the foolishness of the Lord puts to shame the wisdom of the wise.
Right.
Right. And so we need to, let's look at, so what happened? So they do these things, and what happened? In that area, they just recently had their first kidnapping-free year.
Yeah, which is notable.
In decades.
It's notable.
I mean, that place was famous for kidnappings and beheadings.
Yes.
And they had their first kidnapping-free year
amazing.
in decades because so many of these extremists have been surrendering.
Yeah.
Because of this love your enemy stance.
Yes,
it's actually made that area safe.
Yes, and I think, like, along with some of the things that they're doing, right, is like advocating and providing things like for the people who would surrender, like protection and like ways of rehabilitating them and things like that. They're trying to build in like things to bless them and to help them and to actually give them a future. And I think that's amazing because, like, from a governmental level, why would you be doing that? It makes no sense.
But it works.
But it really is working. Like, this area it's really working.
Mm-hmm. I remember I was sitting talking with a Islamic militant, fundamentalist Islamic militant youth. And I asked him, what are your dreams? And he said, I want more Christian friends because I've found out that they're just normal people like me. And that absolutely blew my mind. That was the most humanizing thing because, again, Islamic militant youth saying, I found out Christians are just normal people like me.
Yeah.
What? That's wild because he's living in this, fundamentalist environment that's pretty closed.
Yeah.
But the perspective that he grew up in is Christians even white American Christians would love to wipe their people off the face of the earth, given the chance.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then he started having experiences with Christians
because of people reaching
because of our local friends,
because of our local partners,
and they started having these experiences, and it starts to break down that narrative because he's like, oh, they don't hate me, they're not trying to kill me, they care about me, we're now Facebook friends, and this kind of thing. He has to start questioning things, and suddenly he doesn't want to fight anymore. And he's getting out of, ISIS put a siege on the city, and he and the others, they didn't participate in that.
Yeah.
Because of this stuff. I'm telling you, this works.
It does.
This actually works.
Yeah.
It looks like you're going to be a doormat. It looks like you're going to be a doormat, but this is the way of Jesus.
It is the gospel. I mean, like, he literally gave his life.
Yeah.
Like, and it wasn't stolen from him. It was given. And I think that isn't that the invitation of the gospel? Take up your cross and follow me.
Take up your cross.
Like, you're not worthy unless you take up your cross and follow him. Like, it means this, like, go, like, this is the gospel.
It is. Loving enemies is the central message of the gospel.
Yes.
It's that God loves enemies.
Yes.
So much that he's willing to die for them.
And also it says, like, they were enemies of God in their own minds. Okay? Like, we were enemies of God in our own minds. So God's like, let me just, like, make this extra clear that you've always been my child. You were an enemy in your own mind. You set yourself up as my enemy. And what happens if we take that same heart and look at the enemy, like people who are our enemies? Like, oh, you're an enemy of me in your own mind, but I see you, your brother.
Yeah.
You're a child.
Yeah.
Like, I see you, even though in your mind you see an enemy, I see a child. I see a brother, and I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to even go as far as to lay my life down for you. I think that's incredibly powerful.
That one guy that we know there is a guy who is lying in wait to kill him.
Yeah.
And he had a gun and everything, and he would set up, there is this certain road that, our friend would take regularly, and this guy would set up on the road with a gun as an ambush to kill him. And whenever our friend saw him, he would pull over and offer him a ride somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy's like, what is wrong with you? Like, don't crazy. You know I'm trying to kill you? And he's like, I don't care.
No, and he said, what he said was, I know you want to kill me, but kill me later.
Yeah, that's right. He said, kill me later. Kill me another time. Let me just give you a ride right now.
And then he gave generously to him.
Yeah.
He said like he's never refused him anything that he needed because he wants him to have an encounter with that kind of love.
So what happened was that guy who was trying to kill him ultimately ended up repenting, stopped trying to kill him. They became best friends. He got born again, and now they are best friends and ministry partners serving their community together. It's amazing.
It's so crazy.
Amazing. This works.
It's crazy.
And when he's telling the story, he says, sometimes I would have the evil thought of buying a gun to protect myself. And I'm like, oh,
yeah, but he said
Jesus.
even people with guns get killed. So it's, I think it's a radical
of buying a gun to protect myself.
I want to know, like, what is it inside of us that makes us resist this, like, command?
I think it might be self-preservation.
Yeah.
And the desire to be right in some case. It's self-preservation, self-protection, and maybe the desire to be right in other cases that might not involve mortal danger. But let's say somebody's just like really antagonistic.
Yeah.
Towards you, something like that. And I want to be seen as being right. I want to be validated and vindicated.
Yeah.
But the mission of Jesus says there's a bigger story happening here.
Yeah.
And all that stuff is peripheral.
Yeah.
And the big story is God in Christ reconciling the world to himself and giving to us the word of reconciliation.
Yeah. I think this message is meant to offend us. I think that it's supposed to point out the places inside that are like really not in line with God, like his heart and his values. And I love it when I read this and I get offended because I'm like, there's something in there that still needs to like come under under submission to who God is and like truth, because I think otherwise you can kind of like live the like idea of righteousness, right? But this is actually requiring something from us.
Yep.
Like it actually requires, and I think that we don't realize like how much living like Jesus and interacting with the world like Jesus did actually requires everything. There's not like you can't like portion out part of your life and part of yourself for the Lord. Like he wants all of it. And I think he even gives us situations to walk this out so that we can be transformed more into.
Yeah. Another thing that I love about this is that it is a position of power. I remember I was talking with this guy and he's a spiritual seeker type of guy. And he was talking about how he's like, I've been cutting toxic people out of my life and that kind of thing, and like searching for peace and this kind of thing. I'm like that's one level, that's one layer.
Right.
right? That's one level of power of saying, you're toxic. I'm going to cut you out,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And there's a type of wisdom to that, but there's another thing above that that says, you're toxic. I'm going to powerfully love you.
Yeah.
And be good to you.
Yeah.
Violently.
Yeah.
Aggressively, like not visually aggressively, but like I'm going to be
proactively.
I am on a mission
Yeah.
to be good to you.
Yeah.
And I think about like one of our friends in the Philippines, he had an issue where there's this pastor who is slandering him.
Yeah.
He's a pastor, there's another pastor who's coming against him, slandering him, and being really a thorn in his side, you know. And so he decided, this guy's my enemy, so I'm going to target him. And he started sending him gifts, inviting him to events, inviting him to birthday parties, having meals with him and that kind of thing. And this guy's like, why are you being so nice to me? Because he knows he knows how he's been treating him. He knows the things he's been spreading about him. He's like, why are you being so nice to me? And he said, because I'm treating you as my enemy.
That's amazing.
He's like, if you were just another pastor, I wouldn't be pursuing you this way, but because I see you as my enemy, I'm really going out of my way to show love and stuff. And their relationship was healed, and they, you know,
yeah, it's amazing.
It's amazing. So, well, it's like my point is though that it's a position of power.
Yeah, it is.
It's a position of power where if you're just cutting toxic people out, or you're responding in kind, returning evil for evil, your behavior is then determined by the other person.
Yeah.
But to love your enemy is this ultimate position of power that says, I will be good to you because this is who I am as a son of God, because I'm living by my values, which are the values of the kingdom, no matter what you do.
Right.
This is what's coming out of me. It's a position of power.
Right.
And I realized this a while back, a few years ago, there was a situation where someone was trying to take advantage of me. And I realized I can't be robbed if I'm being generous.
True. Yep.
So I'm going to give them extra.
Yeah.
And then bam, it's a position of power.
Yeah.
Again.
Right. But it's I think that, and the thing is,
steal my TV, I'll give you the stereo too.
Yeah.
Boom. Now I'm being generous and you're not robbing me.
Well, and it's like, it's taking you out of a place of like victim, right? And putting you in a place of benefactor, giving.
That's right.
Yeah. And I love that. I love that.
It's so offensive.
And it's the verse that says like heaping burning coals on their head, right?
That's
what
right.
Is that one? Quote it.
Yeah. I mean, you do good to those who hate you, and love your enemy. In doing so, you'll heap burning coals.
You know, when I heard that verse when I was younger, I thought it meant like, oh yeah, we're gonna burn their heads. They're gonna like their consciences are gonna be like, oh gosh, you know, burning. But you know what that comes from, right? Is actually that in the olden days, no,
back in my day, we used to carry pots on our heads with the coals.
Yes, they used
We'd go to the neighbor's house and say, my fire's gone out. They'd put the coals on our heads.
Yes. Basically. Well, now you need to finish.
That's what they would do.
Yes. I'm like, why aren't you finishing this? They would go, and it would be the people from the like the furthest outside would be running through with this pot of coals in their head, trying to get to their fire before they burn out. But a lot of times, by the time that they got to their fire, the coals would have all been burnt out.
If they lived really far
out. And so as they ran, people would come out of their...
I don't think they're actually running,
or
do you?
Whatever.
Just this little picture's very frantic.
Well, I feel like...
They're just running. This coals... People are throwing coals. They're running fast.
No, but they're trying to get home quickly.
Yeah. They're trying to get home.
Wouldn't you try to get home quickly if your fire was going to burn out?
I would be so
I think you would be going
scrambling
fast.
On all fours.
Anyways, they're carrying this pot is what we need to know. They're trying to get home quick so it doesn't burn out.
Yeah.
Anyways, as they're passing, people are putting fresh coals on top so that their fire doesn't go out.
Yeah.
And that's what this means. It's not like I'm going to do a nice thing for you, so then you're just like your conscience is like, you're feeling guilty or something like that. No, actually, it's literally.
Although that does happen.
Yes, but I'm saying that's not what the verse means.
Yeah.
The verse means blessing them so that their fire doesn't go out.
It's like
preserving
do good to them
their life
so that you help them. It's like,
yes.
I'm going to do this to you for your well-being.
Like it's actually for them.
Here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that. But it is scandalous.
So this is a topic that we need to do a lot of different episodes about.
Yes.
And there's some people that I'd love to have as guests as well and interview them about this. But what do you guys think about this?
This is like the opening segment of this because there's going to be a lot.
Is this just insanity? It works, right? Where's the limit? Is there a limit?
Does Jesus say that there's a limit?
Yeah.
It's
not like God would like give his life for this or something. Right? Where's the limit? Where's the limit? So anyways, let us know in the comments. What do you think? And subscribe because we're going to do a lot more about this topic.
Sure.
And if you really hate this, if you hated this, then definitely subscribe and keep watching.
Yeah.
You need this. I love you. Cheers to our enemies. And also, if you want to get in touch, something like that, you can follow the links below the video. We'll see you guys next time.